Hey, it's Adam with the Backpack Theory Podcast, where we unpack past experiences to help define a better future. And today, we're going to be unpacking A Happy World, featuring Akash Patel. Akash is the founder of Happy World Foundation. He is the chairman of the UN Association of the United States, the Time Magazine Innovative Educator of the Year in 2022. And most importantly, he is a new father and married man.
Yeah.
Akash, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Adam. And it's such a joy to be a father. My first child, his name is Lucas. Such a bundle of joy. 2 months, 2 days old today.
Dude, having kids, I've got she's 2 and 9 months now. And it's remarkable whenever you see them grow, whenever you see them just kind of start developing, especially in those really early ages. And it's like you don't want to miss anything. It's like, when does the first walk?
Mm-hmm.
Have you started having some of those moments?
Yes, for sure. And I'm so grateful that, I work where I have paid paternity leave. You don't see that very much in different parts of our country. I think we need to get ahead of the game here and make sure that most parents have access to at least some paid paternity or maternity leave.
Yeah, I completely agree, especially whenever it comes to, the conversation of the topic, a happy world, right? We live in a society today and, I don't want to jump too far ahead whenever it comes to what you do, but really like those formative years, those childhood years, like the development, the nurturing that is really a part of our society that, if you look in some Eastern cultures, is still really, really strong. And you look in the American and Western society and it's kind of diminished over the years because we're a production-based society. Which has become somewhat polarizing. And I know that whenever it comes to what you do, whenever it comes to, the Happy World Foundation, whenever it comes to the UN Association, why don't you just, tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now?
Well, thank you, Adam, for bringing that up, because there's nothing wrong with being a capitalist society.
No.
I think what we do have an issue is the deterioration of the family and the institution of family. So we'll touch base on that. But what I mostly do is I honor my twin brother's memory, who passed away in 2018, through a nonprofit I created that helps connect today over 1 million kids from across the United States with people in over 150 countries via video calling at no cost. And then I'm the elected chairman of the United Nations Association of the United States, where I represent American interests at the UN and peace and conflict resolution, peace building, which is what our world so desperately needs today. And in my personal capacity, from time to time, I teach classes with community colleges, with public schools. Just love being with young people and young adults and helping shape their minds and helping shape their futures.
Yeah, because that's the future of our country, right? This is the future of our world, the youth. And, they're so susceptible now. There's so much access to them whenever it comes to things like TV, whenever it comes to things. I'm guilty, man. Dude, there's times whenever I'm sitting there trying to cook and trying to clean, and I am even tempted whenever I'm sitting there doing things like turn on Bluey or turn on this or turn on that. And it's just so remarkable whenever it comes to our society, how often we just allow other things to influence our children. And they're always watching us and they're always paying attention to what we're doing. And so is that kind of one of the things that you're trying to integrate, is try to get healthy integration whenever it comes to technology?
Yeah, just think about technology. A lot of people complain about technology being so terrible, that what a terrible influence it is. But at the same time, I look at technology as an opportunity to connect. In this polarizing world that we live in, like you just very well put it, there's so much polarization, there's so much hatred, there's so much negativity.
Yeah.
But we are trying to use the internet, which we have so readily available in rural or inner cities across the United States, and use that internet to help children connect and see beyond the four walls of their classrooms, so that a child in Rush Springs, Oklahoma, or a child in a remote town of Alaska can travel to Kenya, or can travel to India, or can travel to Brazil without ever leaving their classroom. So that someday they could be like, oh, when I grow up, I do want to go to Rio de Janeiro and I want to paraglide off the mountains in Rio. Or when I grow up, I want to go do something, go volunteer with sea turtles, nesting sea turtles at the Indian Ocean. So the whole idea is to give children that don't have the resources, Adam. There's many kids that don't have access to even travel in their own states.
Yeah.
So when I saw that gap, and I want us to focus on filling gaps in life, because life is all about filling gaps. If you truly want to live a very purposeful life, you're going to see a lot of gaps in life. And when you see those gaps, there's a lot of people that are going to look at the gaps and be like, I'm going to wait for somebody else to fill that gap. But that's not how I thought when I, saw those gaps. I saw that the kids did want to learn about, like, my family's from India. So we immigrated to the United States, and kids wanted to know all about India. They wanted to know about the tigers and the elephants in India, and they wanted to know those stories when I started teaching in Oklahoma. So I was like, I think these kids don't know much about this. And I've traveled and had the privilege to have traveled to over 50 countries by the time I was just 22 years old. I was like, why don't I use this privilege and these experiences that I've had to share the globe with these children? And what better way to do that than start inviting my very own friends that I have in every other part of the globe and invite them on Skype. Back in the day, we used to have Skype. Nobody uses Skype anymore. It's all Zoom, Teams, Google Meets, the WhatsApp video calling, Facebook video calling. So back in 2014, we created something very small, Adam. It was just small rural inner city classrooms from Chickasha, Anadarko, and Oklahoma City, connecting with people in over 50 countries and playing mystery hangout. So you can imagine this is a group of American kids talking to somebody from Asia or Africa, and they don't know where they're from. And they're asking them questions to solve the mystery of where they're from. How exciting is it for a child to be able to meet somebody from thousands of miles away, and especially somebody who's probably around their age, and get to talk to them, get to know a little bit about them, and see that they too are humans. And I wish our world had people talking to each other instead of talking at each other with what we have today. I wish people could simply break bread despite their differences. And I wish we could teach children like your daughter or my son, and we could show them that we might be Americans, and there are other folks in other parts of the globe. They're also humans, and they too want better lives for themselves, just like we do. They might not share the same skin color, or they might not share the same beliefs, but guess what? If we were to all get in a fight, we would all be bleeding red. So the whole idea of our happy world is to give American children access to quality global experiences so they can look beyond the four walls of their classrooms and they can see that we are all humans, which is a game changer today in conflict resolution and peace building.
Yeah, I love that. One of my favorite quotes is information without implementation is ignorance. And I think that a lot of people are very aware of this. And a lot of people see those gaps as you describe them, but they're looking for someone else to fill the gap. They're always like, well, someone else is going to take care of it. Someone's going to step in and do it for me, instead of actually being the catalyst of change. And, talking about growing up and talking about these things, I mean, you really kind of told us why you're so passionate, and you can really hear the passionate, but like, if you were going to describe your purpose, Akash Patel, like if you were going to describe, how you basically live out your purpose, how would you describe that?
Adam, see, I'm Indian American, so I came to this country with my twin brother, and the stereotype for Indian men is you could either be an engineer, lawyer, a doctor, or quite frankly, a disgrace to the family. So we came to study nuclear engineering with scholarships at Iowa State University. And the first semester, we knew we had so much energy in between the two of us, we could not be working with nuclear reactors for the rest of our lives. We gave that up. We bought a car on Craigslist, and we ran off from Iowa to Oklahoma in the winter of 2009. Can you imagine two Indian men that had no idea how to drive through the snow? And here we are in a little SUV we bought on Craigslist, and we moved to Oklahoma. And people ask, why Oklahoma? Well, we had an uncle who lived here. So we're like, hey, we'll at least have somewhere to crash while we go to a community college and figure our lives out. So we went to Oklahoma City Community College, which is where I found my passion for speaking, for teaching, for diplomacy. And I was like, I'm going to grow up to become a high school math teacher. And guess what? I graduated. I became a high school math teacher. But while I was in school, I started backpacking all the way from Mexico down to South America. And I ended up picking up Spanish. And when I came back, I took the Spanish exam, became a Spanish teacher. Never taught high school math. Ended up teaching Spanish and started filling those gaps. When I saw kids, in fact, you know what, Adam? Even I had stereotypes of Oklahoma. Can you imagine somebody who's never been to Oklahoma? I thought I was going to see cowboys at the airport. And then there were cowboys at a diner in Chickasha, Oklahoma, where I went to school. And they said, oh, gosh, you're from India. I bet you can see elephants in the streets in India. And because they were adults, I joked with them. I said, yeah, you sure can. Depends on how much you've been drinking. So again, the same way, depends on how much I could have been drinking. I probably could have seen what, cowboys in
That's funny.
in Oklahoma City.
Yes.
But that's again brings me to stereotypes. That we all have stereotypes. Akash has them. You might have them right now if you see somebody from the Middle East or from Asia, from some other part of the globe, because they come from somewhere. Like you said, we consume information from somewhere, and we have perceptions of people one way or the other. But the beauty of sitting down and breaking those barriers and, breaking bread, which I did with cowboys and kids of cowboys when I went to school in Chickasha, Oklahoma, mostly kids of farmers and ranchers that went to school with me. So can you imagine? I went to rodeos with my cowboy boots and cowboy hat. And because I'm dark skinned, everybody thought I was the Mexican cowboy. I went, I had a rosary on too, absolute Mexican cowboy. But that tells me that, hey, if I could break bread with people that I had no clue how they live their lives, like ranchers and farmers and cowboys, and they can break bread with me and see that we're just humans and become friends, we could do that everywhere. And that's what our world needs today. We have so many conflicts raging all around the globe right now. Especially look at the conflict in Ukraine and Russia and what's happening in Israel. Everywhere. I wish we could just teach children at a young age to appreciate the differences of others so that we would not be in the places where we are today. So my why is just to help American children and children around the globe, because we don't just work with children in the United States. We connect them with people in over 150 countries. The whole idea, the whole premise of this organization is to help people communicate with each other and not yell at each other, not start another war, not go, blow another place up. The whole idea is so that people can learn from each other, appreciate each other, have fun while doing it. Those kids are having so much fun while they're guessing, where Adam's from, where Akash is from, where, Juan's from. And they're getting to travel beyond the four walls of their classrooms. They're seeing beyond the four walls. So when they grow up, they're like, oh, I want to graduate. When I graduate, this is what I want to do. And I want to travel to Brazil. I want to take selfies with penguins in Antarctica. I mean, those are the kinds of, goals I want. I remember some of my kids, they would sometimes tell, oh, when I grow up, I want to troll Mr. Patel. Because Patel speaks 6 languages and I want to grow up to troll him to speak 7. I'm like, that's the kind of, trolling I want to see.
Yeah, inspiration. I listen to that and a phrase comes to mind, breaking down stereotypes to create unity. That's so beautiful, man, because, we do live in a polarizing time and we live in a world to where people don't want to have conversations with anybody that they feel like is different than they are. And, we're so busy talking at people, as you said, that we're not really that concerned about hearing other people. And you look at what's going on with children. I mean, the younger and younger generations are getting so heavily medicated because they're getting depressed earlier. Whenever it comes to people harming themselves, those rates are going up. Whenever it comes to violent crimes in younger kids, because they're becoming very disassociated because they live in this alternative reality of polarization to where they really don't even have an opportunity to even formulate a position or an idea on other people that are any different than they are because they're not taught to actually communicate. And the primary driver, the primary hormonal response is cortisol, which is stress, which is depressant, which is why you see SSRIs, antidepressants is the #1 prescribed medication. And it's happening younger and younger and younger because, during those years where you're going in and making that impact, these kids, they're just starting to develop their identity. Their emotional responses are developing. And if you're not going in there and basically nurturing them towards having those healthy communications, towards someone walks in that looks different than you and like looking them as a human, not a color, not a ethnicity. Like you just look at them as a human and open up that dialect whenever it comes to communication. Have you, whenever you're going out to these schools or like whenever you first start this mission of unity that I would call it, how much resistance did you have at first being, a person of color yourself and going into like some of these rural communities? Did you get pushback? Did you get like some people that, basically discriminated?
Yeah, sure, Adam. I'm not going to use the color game that people play, but I'll tell you the joy that I had. Yes, of course, there was some resistance, but let me tell you how I overcame that resistance.
That's what I want to hear.
So when I was just about to graduate college, as I told you, kids wanted to know all about elephants, and a little part that maybe my twin never shared with you. My family actually worked with elephants back in India. So I used that experience of the thousands of pictures I have with baby elephants and adult elephants. and I collaborated with the world's largest poo-poo paper company. Okay, you heard that right, okay?
I've heard this.
Elephants don't eat Raising Cane's or Chick-fil-A like us. They eat grass, and they eat 500 pounds of grass every day. They poop a lot. That poop doesn't stink. You can wash it and change it into paper, biodegradable paper. It's called elephant poo-poo paper. Even the Oklahoma City Zoo sells it. So I collaborated with the world's largest poo-poo paper company, which is in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And guess what? They sent me 100,000 pieces of elephant poo-poo paper in the mail. And I took that paper when I graduated in my last year of school, and I traveled across the state of Oklahoma from elementary, middle, and high schools to a point when I would be at Penn Square Mall or Sooner Mall. There would be some random kid screaming, "Mom, that's the poo-poo paper teacher." They didn't remember who I was. I saw the spark in the eyes of the kids when they saw Akash sharing stories of elephants and how incredible those animals are. And through elephants, teaching them about India, teaching them about sustainability, teaching them how to make, DNA necklaces, to study elephant poaching patterns, to see why 99 elephants are being killed every day. And what could American kids sitting right here in Oklahoma do to protect those gentle giants? So when I saw that spark in the eyes of the kids, Adam, I knew I could do a lot more, because if I could just share stories of India, I could get people from Europe, I could get people from Asia, I could get people from everywhere. And when teachers and administrators saw the value of the work we do, nothing polarizing about the work we do, nothing partisan about the work we do. There's so much ideological indoctrination, left or right, whether it's far left, far right, it's happening right here as we talk, and most of it in the United States. Surprisingly, I've traveled everywhere around the globe, and we don't have the kinds of culture wars we have right here in the United States. So I was like, this is the perfect antidote to polarization. Who wouldn't buy this? And that's why we won widespread bipartisan support over the years for the work we do. I've been recognized by President Bush, President Obama, President Clinton. Left or right, people have seen and gotten on the bandwagon. Like, what's polarizing or what's something partisan about connecting children with people in other countries?
I love that, dude. I love, the passion you speak. The other thing that I love how you phrase whenever, I open up the floor, because I am a very like open-minded person whenever it comes to things, like, and I don't like putting anybody in a box. So I like opening the door. And whenever I brought up like what frictions you run into, and you avoided the opportunity of victimhood. Yes. So many people, regardless of what your circumstances, I think that we really in this country right now, in the world in general, like we can really fall into this narrative of victimhood. And it's a fear-based narrative. It's not a faith-based narrative. It's a fear-based. And like your immediate response, which tells me how genuine you are and just who you are as a person, was, I'm not going to go down that path. But what I will tell you is basically how I came up with a solution, like how exactly I created a catalyst, like how I looked beyond whatever, immediate projection could have even been there. I just looked past it and I looked for a solution. And I look in our country, I look in our world today, I read a lot about just global economics. I like socioeconomics. I like understanding a worldview. I don't stay in this box of like Oklahoma. I've got friends, like some of my best friends are far left. Some of my other really good friends are far right. And I can have a logical conversation with them, but like when you break down to core values, whenever it breaks down to humanity, you get this ideological banter out of the way. Typically people are good, and typically people want the best. If you can get past the brainwashing, is that something that whenever it comes to your work, with the UN, that you've seen kind of like when people can get past those ideological arguments that you can start
it happens,
unity?
but not as much anymore with how, folks don't want to heed to what the UN does. Like UN says, hey, we're going to go after and hold Russia accountable. We're going to hold other bad actors like Iran accountable for treatment of women. But that's the exact same reason why they're calling for reforms at the world's largest body of nations, over 190 nations that get together to try to break down their differences and see if they can broker peace and move past some of their differences. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. But if I'm talking just based on my personal nonprofit, that's our core belief. We do see the humanity in people. And we do believe, just like you, I do believe that people at the core are are decent, amazing humans, because no matter who they are, far left, far right, or on the center, everybody wants to be happy, right?
Mm.
Everybody wants a better life for themselves, for their families. Look at the basic necessities. Like you said, you move past that ideological nonsense and noise. You realize that people at the core just want to be happy.
Yeah.
They just want a better life for themselves. And I wish more and more adults and leaders of different countries came down and realized that people just want to be happy. Well, maybe there's some conflict over land and over occupation of land in one part or the other, and who should have, historically claimed that particular land. But if you go down, you realize that we're still all brothers and sisters. I wish more and more politicians and more leaders could do that. I don't see that, frankly speaking, to be very honest. I don't see that, because look at how many years we are now in the conflict in the Middle East, or conflict in Russia and Ukraine, or many other emerging conflicts that nobody talks about, because the only publicized conflicts that you hear about all the time are the ones in the Middle East or in Russia or Ukraine. But there's active conflicts in nations all around the globe. There's probably over 30 of them right now as we speak.
Wow.
That don't get the attention that they deserve, because media chooses one way or the other to highlight something. So at the end of the day, what we want to try to avoid is, through the grassroots work of what I call my John Lennons, the 2000 something John Lennons we have at the Happy World Foundation. These are college bound adults. They're mostly college students, Adam. They're young college students who believe that we could all live, we can all coexist, and we can set apart our differences and just have fun and just learn from each other and be friends. The whole idea is this is like the pen pal program you used to have. It's on steroids, which is you're bringing people here live on a screen and getting them to connect with children. But to answer your question, I don't think the world is where people can look past their differences. That's not how some of our adult leaders are behaving.
Do you feel like, we covered a lot of information there, and one thing I want to bring up is, you're talking about, I had a discussion this morning with a gentleman, and he was very, I was at a men's group, and, we were all together and we were talking, and after the group, we had a sidebar. We were talking about, he was talking about, well, the next generation and everything's going on. Like, it's just, everything's going down and going down. And, I kind of looked at it and I was like, I actually disagree with that. I think the younger generation, I think the kids that are, what is it? The Gen Z
and millennials like us.
Gen Z and millennials are starting to wake up. I really genuinely believe that.
I do believe it too.
And I have to believe that for my daughter. And so, whenever people these older people that have been in it forever, and they're basically very, very polarized, and they have gone through the worst severe, and as you get older, a lot of people don't know this, your cognitive reserve starts getting used up. And whenever it comes to, if you're watching television all the time, and you're just absorbing that information because you're not as active, you're not plugging into the younger generation, or you're removing yourself from the younger generation, you're a lot easier to be manipulated, and you're a lot easier to be indoctrinated than even as a child.
Yes.
In some regard, because your neurological functions are not firing at the same level they were whenever you were more active. And so you see these older generations basically holding on to the power, holding on to the wealth, not relinquishing it to the younger generation, because they have this fear of the fact that the younger generation is going to screw it up, which, in theory, just to call a spade, they were the ones that set the stage for us. Whenever I get into these conversations with these older people that are very polarized, I've started really pushing back, and I'm like, no, you know what? I think the younger generation, whenever I look at them, want to unify. They actually want to get to the bottom of things. They actually want to start having these more thoughtful conversations. You don't see it as much on the media, but the more and more I talk to younger and younger people, the more I see the desire. Like, you're seeing, whenever it comes to the use of alcohol has dropped off a cliff. Whenever it comes to nicotine, whenever it comes to all of these unhealthy habits, you're starting to see the younger generation get smarter and smarter, because they've been over indoctrinated to where now they're pushing back. Have you seen that? Am I accurate?
Yes.
Whenever
I'll give you a couple stories.
Give me a couple
stories.
Absolutely.
So when I went to school in Chickasha, Oklahoma,
Yeah.
I was the odd man out there.
You
Only 1,200.
You didn't see it
1,200.
Yeah.
1,200 students in the entire university. Graduating class of probably 200 people, and that too in all faculties, all schools combined was 200 people in the graduating class. So the School of Education probably had less than 50, 25 people that graduated. So I still remember vividly two of my friends, closest friends that went to school, Beth and Tori, from rural Oklahoma. And somebody came out to our school to speak about some conflicts in the Middle East, especially I think they're talking about something in Syria. Now, I'm surrounded by mostly Southern Baptist friends. So you won't believe what happened. These two millennial women, they started a toy drive and collected 1,200 toys from mostly Southern Baptist families for Muslim refugee kids in Syria, and drove from Chickasha, Oklahoma to Washington, D.C. to drop them off at the Institute for Peace. So why don't young people fill me with optimism? That's one story. I've had kids, students in my own classroom. These are the Gen Zs that you're talking about, middle schoolers in Dallas, Texas. They spoke to the CEO of Community Recycling. Who wouldn't want to, we recycle whether you like it or not. This is an organization that recycles stuff in the United States and sends it to 50 different countries. So my kids were fascinated. They're like, oh, I'm in inner city Dallas, but I live in a 1-bedroom apartment. I love what you're doing. What can I do to help you? So he's like, I'm just going to send you a box with shipping paid for. Throw in your gently used shoes or clothes that you no longer use and send it back to me. A month later, we video call him again. And he's like, Bella, look at your shoes. They're going to kids in Philippines. Or Alexis, look at your shirt. It's going to be put to use for kids in Sudan. So for the first time, kids at a Title I school, low socioeconomic school, had realized you don't have to be rich to make a difference in someone's life. And it's a great lesson in giving.
Mhm.
And in fact, in my life, I've seen that the poor are the most generous that you will come across. So my kids are testimony to that optimism that I see in Gen Z, and my colleagues from college, from rural Oklahoma. If they could mobilize Southern Baptists to give toys to kids, Muslim kids on the other side of the world, hey, I believe in humanity. And I do believe some of these older folks that are dividing and polarizing our society, once they fall off, we're going to see a lot more peace and harmony on our planet.
Yeah, I agree. I grew up Southern Baptist. So I was very Southern Baptist.
Mhm.
Still love all my Southern Baptist brothers and sisters. My relation with God is really evolved.
Mhm.
I look at, if I look at the Christ figure that was Jesus and the way that he lived and the way that he spoke kindness. He spoke peace. He spoke loving everybody, understanding everybody, regardless of who they were. He went and hung out with the people that the hierarchy at the time basically rejected. And he basically said, no, like everybody should be accepted. And I look at the younger generation and I really have so much hope because I look at them as wanting to make a difference in this world. And I think the millennials basically are waking up right now and they're going, if we don't do something, like this is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse.
Yes.
And, our parents' generation, the boomers,
Mhm.
they went through they inherited the most plentiful and bountiful, in history, like in the history of the world, like it is the most plentiful and bountiful time period in history.
Yes.
And they inherited that, but they're holding on to it. They're also living longer. They're also medicated. So therefore, like they're not relinquishing basically the power. You look at politics and it's a great example. A lot of those people are so disconnected from what the younger people want, but the narrative of control. And I think that that's one of the big things that you see happening is they feel like they are losing control. So their techniques, the way that they're dealing with things now are a little bit more aggressive and polarizing because they feel like they're not needed anymore. And, I have a lot of hope whenever it comes to the younger generation with things like what you're doing and going into classrooms and connecting people all over the world to basically have an increased theory of mind. It's just so impactful, Akash. And, I want to pivot a little bit, whenever it comes to the idea of a happy world, the idea of a joyful world, the idea of like this unified world. And I was dear friends with your brother. I was really good friends, but he was your twin brother. And, I know that, I remember I was at his funeral after he passed and had an opportunity to speak there. And why don't you tell us a little bit about, how your mission basically pivoted whenever it came to that time and how that invigorated your passion?
Yeah. So I was in school administering a state mandated exam, a reading exam to middle schoolers. And the school resource officer in Dallas, Texas had to pull me out and say, hey, Mr. Patel, your twin's no more. And he died in a plane crash last night. This is April 9, 2018.
Yeah.
And I was devastated because at that time, I was running an initiative called Global Experiences, something similar. I was giving American kids global experiences. Everybody deserves access to some sort of global experience so that they can look beyond the four walls of their classrooms. So I saw that passing of my twin brother as an opportunity to turn my grief into quite a legacy of giving. And we renamed that initiative we started into a nonprofit called Happy World Foundation because my twin's name was Anand
Mm,
Happy Patel.
right.
He is very well known everywhere as Happy. So through the Happy World Foundation, we don't just connect classrooms at him. We have a happy nonprofit clinic that has helped over 60 startup founders create their own 501c3s at no cost. Because we believe that people who want to start nonprofits, why would they want to pay $5,000 to an attorney, especially because they're starting something with a cause where they need the money for their projects.
Right.
So we help anybody who has a great idea to fill a gap in some community somewhere around the globe. And while I was gone for that very same funeral you mentioned in Oklahoma, my students, middle schoolers in Dallas, Texas, at a Title I school, when I came back, they had $1,500 to give to my family for the funeral. I was like, there's no way I'm going to take that money. I returned the money. And the following weekend, when I came back to school, the cafeteria and the entire library was filled with happy meals, with happy
Wow.
signs. So I was like, if my kids can have so much empathy, such remarkable empathy, and create happy meals that they don't want the money back and they want to use that money to maybe provide a warm meal to the homeless in Dallas, why can't we match that generosity? And ever since we've distributed with high school and college students across the country, over 25,000 happy meals for people, homeless people all around the country. So we don't just connect classrooms. We don't just, do the global connections. We are actually, impacting communities in many different ways. Like ever since my brother's passing, we've given out over $100,000 in small grants and scholarships to folks everywhere around the country.
Wow. That's incredible, dude. And I think it's really remarkable whenever it comes to just, you know, the fact that like such a tragic loss, whenever it comes to like losing your brother, could turn into such a positive inspiration and something that has just really made a massive impact. And I love the fact that you took a loss and you turned it into a mission. You turned it into something larger for his legacy. I know right after this, you're actually going to an
Oklahoma City
induction.
Community College, yeah. So I'm doing just an interview for to prepare for the induction for of my twin brother in Oklahoma City Community College's Hall of Fame. So I'm very excited for that because just in a matter of 6 years, my brother was an entrepreneur. He did his own thing with hosting EDM festivals and concerts for young people across the country. But I was like, how could I meaningfully take his zeal and his passion for entrepreneurship and turn it into something where we're going to empower and build capacity in other young people? So we're doing it now with the Happy Nonprofit Clinic. We're doing it now through the Global Ambassadors Leadership Institute. We're doing it now through those mini grants and scholarships. Last year, we took 58 students and teachers from across the region on fully funded fellowships to Cuba and asked me, why did we take them to a communist country? Because I want them to be able to be grateful for what they have in the United States. A lot of people in this country live with so much privilege that they have forgotten that they live in an incredibly blessed nation where they have access to everything. So I took them to Cuba, a communist nation that does not have access to anything because of the embargo that you know of. So when they go down there and they don't have access to electricity or they don't have access to Uber Eats or DoorDash and their luxuries of every day, they start realizing that we have it so much better in our country. And why can't we use that privilege and the many freedoms we absolutely enjoy and take for granted to uplift and improve the lives of others who don't live in the same situations as us?
Wow. That's incredible, dude. I, and that's something that we definitely fall into is this privilege mindset to where we just expect everything and we just expect it to show up and we just expect for problems to be taken care of. And, that's a big problem that we've had in the country. I think globally it is, in different developed areas, with technology and everything, it's become a little bit more prevalent. But here in the United States, especially, like, dude, you have the opportunity to make an impact every single day if you choose to wake up and do so. And really, looking at ways to like improve that, like looking at ways to work with people around you. Stop disparaging it. Stop like becoming a victim of society and saying, well, I can't do anything else. I'm just going to give up and throw up my hands. No, like, dude, like roll up your sleeves and do your part. Step out there, like be the difference that you want to see. Like take the information and put it into action because that's ultimately what is going to change the future generations and the generations whenever it comes to your children. Because as you know, like whenever you become a father,
Mhm.
something changes inside of you, like you start going, wow, like it's not just about me anymore. It's about the future of my child. And whenever it comes to you recently, like becoming a father, like has that kind of struck you? And like, have you started thinking about like what kind of impact do I want to make for my child?
Absolutely. And I want to, the impact and the world that my child is going to live in.
Yeah.
With all of what's going on, I'm always worried about, hey, what kind of future is my child going to have with for what's going on? But at the same time, I'm filled with optimism and with lots of inspiration through all these young people I see everywhere around the globe. In that, there's two incidents that really changed me. One is my brother's passing, to where I always think about how am I going to keep his memory alive in a very positive way. And that's why I do what I do every single day with the Happy World Foundation.
Right.
And now that very same mission that I run, I'm thinking about my child and the children of others. That what kind of world do we want our children to live in?
Yeah.
So hopefully, through our movement, we can help create and make our world a little happier, a little smaller every single day.
I love that, dude. I love it. I love the passion. I love the why. I love the how and I love the what. I ask everybody this question whenever they're on the podcast. If you were going to describe your purpose in one word, what would that one word be and why?
Oh, that froze me. I just had a brain fart moment out there. One word to describe my why.
Yeah. What would it be?
One is quite challenging. I can think of two
Just pick one of the two.
gaps,
Why?
because it's all been about filling gaps. A gap I saw after my twin brother passed away, a gap that I saw when I saw kids that had not traveled outside their communities, or a gap I see in our world today for more humanity, for more connection, and for people to speak to each other instead of speak at each other. So it's all been, my whole life has been about just filling the gaps.
How do you find the passion? Like, there's probably someone listening to this today and they're like, how? Like, how are you the catalyst of change? Like, how if I've been beaten down? Like, how if I'm so hopeless in a situation? Like, how do I step into the gap?
Yeah, well, earlier today I said how, my family and most Indian families thought that we were just going to be a disgrace to the family if we chose anything but engineering, a law, and or medicine. But today my parents are so proud. They go around and say, hey, to every other Asian American family, let your child pursue their passion. They might be the best plumbers out there. They might become the best carpenters out there. Ultimately, you want your kids to be happy. And it's all about being happy, which is what drove me to teaching, which is what drove me from teaching to the United Nations. Never in my lifetime, never in my childhood did I imagine that I would be speaking Spanish and Portuguese as a grown adult. We never learned those languages when we were back in India, but life just happened that way. So I think when you see, again, I want to go back to that filling the gaps. It's about that initiative that people need to take. People need to be self motivated to be like, I am going to fill this gap. And I'm not just going to stop there after filling that gap. I'm going to go find the other gaps and keep filling those gaps until my last breath, because it's all about filling those gaps one after the other and not stopping there, because the only moment when you stop is when you take your last breath and you're leaving this planet. So it's all about continuing that cycle of filling the gap and finding the gaps and not being like, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to wait for somebody else to pick that trash up to tidy this community space that we've got, or I'm not going to wait for somebody else to fill this gap in our community for this specific need that we have. So I think a lot of it comes from overcoming all of that entitlement mindset, or overcoming all of that mindset that somebody else is going to do it. I'm going to expect the government to do it. I'm going to expect someone else to come and do this. Why can't I do it? Don't we all have a responsibility to our community, to our nation? to our planet to make it slightly happier, slightly better? And ultimately, how does it make you feel when you do some of these things? Do you think I do any of what I do today to make money or to become a millionaire? No, I'm not. But I think I'm so blessed as a person. When I sleep every night, I sleep so sound, knowing that I've made my small contribution to this planet. And I know some child somewhere is happier today or is not going to face any of those issues that you spoke about, chronic alcoholism or smoking or addiction to all the negative stuff that you think about. But now they're going to be dreaming beyond and be like, oh, someday when I grow up, I want to go here. I want to go there. This is what I want to do with my life. So I hope that answers your question.
Dude, that's really, really good. I think, I coach people. So like my business is I do purpose coaching and then process development to reduce friction and increase efficiency in organizations and individuals.
Mm.
And one very common thing I hear all the time is, I hear people all the time go, well, once I get this, or once I am here, or once I have this many followers, or once I drive that car, or once I'm worth $1 million, or once, my dad finally tells me good job. And the reality is that if you keep on telling yourself that you're going to follow your purpose once you have something, you will never do it.
Never
Because
do it.
the reality is that the right people don't pick you for what you have. The right people pick you for who you are and why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so caught up with, especially the younger generation. That is my one thing that I'm not fearful of, but I'm weary of, is like this comparison analysis paralysis that we get into of like, you defeat yourself before filling a gap, just a small gap. You go, well, I'm not worthy of filling that gap, or I'm not the one to go fix that problem. It all starts, if you want to solve the recycling problem, if you want to solve global warming problems, then pick up the piece of trash.
Mm-hmm.
And then take it to the recycling bin.
The charity begins at home.
The charity begins at home.
Mm-hmm.
And we identify and we look at, you get on social media and you compare, well, this person's life is this and this person's life is this, without like just understanding the fact that you are who you are right now. And that's perfect in God's eyes. And now what you do with that is you step forward into whatever purpose you have, beyond whatever profit you could ever make. And if you do that, and you continue to do that, and you do that consistently, that's where you slowly build a happier, more fulfilling, and more unified world.
Absolutely. And, that just reminds me of a quote that I'm looking up that I wanted to share. So it says, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive, and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive.
I love that. I love that. And that's right. And I look at you, I look at what you're doing. I look at the passion, like my wise hope. And how do I do that? Well, I share stories of seemingly insurmountable circumstances in my own life to allow Christ's light to shine through all my imperfections, to let anybody know, regardless of where they're at, regardless of what they're going through, there's always hope. And I can wake up every single day, man, and I can inspire hope in someone. Like that's my purpose. If your purpose is gaps, like you can wake up every single day and you can look for another gap to fill. You can look for another kid that like needs a little bit of something or another. Like you can wake up. And I think that we overcomplicate our purpose. And again, we get caught in this, like, once I get there, then I'll make the difference. No, you get there by making the difference right.
And that's what our world, our planet so desperately needs. People like you who have come alive and who know their purpose. And I think you end up finding that purpose when you don't go looking for it. You just find it when you just have come alive. And ask yourselves, what is it that makes you come alive? And go do it.
That's exactly right. Because people get stuck in this box. They get stuck in like the fear of loss. And it's like, dude, like you're never going to live the fulfilled life if you stay comfortable in the box that you're trapped in. Like the keys have been handed to you.
We have way too many people that have the entitlement mindset, and welcome to the United States. I see that every single day in communities all across the country. So we live in a society that has just trained us to be entitled, to get comfortable where we are. I'm so grateful. I was not comfortable in the spot where I was, and I was not afraid of losing. because I lost all of it. I lost the scholarship. I came to Oklahoma with a car on Craigslist that my brother and I bought, and our parents almost disowned us. They're like, what are you guys going to do with your lives? And I feel the greatest today, knowing that what I do is making an impact. And ultimately, it's what has made me come alive. And it is what has made my twin brother and his legacy after his passing come alive. So, yeah, let's go back to, getting people to find that meaningful purpose. And whether it's through watching your podcast, you might end up getting somebody to come alive.
And it's just making that difference. It's being the catalyst. And every single little piece of action you take, every single little piece is, Brene Brown, Darren Greatley's one of my favorite books. I assign that to quite a few people whenever I'm in coaching sessions because I encourage people to read and, just to gain different perspectives and increase your theory of mind and empathy. And, she really talks about like vulnerability. We in our society today, because of this like rejection narrative of like, you can't have an opinion or like, you're going to be shamed if you think one way or the other, like people aren't vulnerable anymore. They don't feel like they can be vulnerable. And like, she talks about vulnerability being a superpower whenever it comes to like, you have to know who you are and you have to state what you think and how you feel. Now, how you do that is very, very important, but more and more, the more and more vulnerable you are, the more and more honest you are. I mean, people can watch my podcast. If people go back through and listen to my podcast, you can literally find anything that I've ever done, negative, positive, whatever, because I just don't care. It doesn't, the things that I've done does not define who I am today. Who I am today is the action that I'm going to take in the next moment. And you can change your entire life in one thing. And Akash, I love the fact that you're taking these little small actions to fill gaps to create a happier world.
Yeah. And giving children those opportunities to see that and then let them find those gaps. Let them go around and be like, hey, what's the gap that I can fill? And when they just go talk to all these people from around the globe, they're looking at the gaps. They're also empathizing because empathy is so powerful. Our kids have lost empathy in the United States. They're so entitled to everything. They get everything that they can ask for. Churches will come together and be like, okay, we'll give you school resources, to a point where kids are not grateful for what they're given in this country. They take it, they throw it, they trash it. They don't appreciate what they have. And then they see a child that has had to work the entire day for less than 50 cents on a farm in Africa or Asia, and then walk for 2 miles to come to a small center where they've got one television to talk to kids in the United States because they think that someday they're going to be out of these lives where they're working in sweatshops or they're working in farms, and they're going to be able to dream to be able to go to the United States someday or go to some other part of the globe and become engineers or lawyers or doctors or teachers or whatever profession they choose. That's the kind of zeal that we need in our people, in our children, in our adults. And we can do that through inspiring empathy in the schools. And how do we inspire that empathy? Show them what they have and make them be grateful for what they have. And the only way you can't teach empathy. You inspire empathy. You inspire empathy through showing them people and places that don't have it as good as you. And that's going to inspire some of that action that you refer to. That's going to inspire some of these people to wake up and be like, I'm going to go alive. I know my life's purpose now, and I've got it so good here. I think this is what I can do to make my family, like you said, charity begins at home, make my home, my household a little better, and then go on to see if they can go change the world.
Gosh, I think we're going to end on that because that is absolutely beautiful. And I cannot thank you enough for what you're doing. And dude, I don't know what your future looks like whenever it comes to where you're going to go, but man, I'm going to be praying for you. I'm going to be rooting you on, whether that's writing a book, whether that's, moving up in the UN, and I'm going to believe in you. And man, I'm always here. Anytime you need some unification backup or anytime, whatever I can do, I'm there for you because I really believe in you. I believe in the mission. I believe in the legacy that you're honoring for your brother. And it's just been an absolute pleasure to have this conversation. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
And thank you, Adam. Thank you. I'll take all the prayers because who knows, someday I may want to run for public office. I'm just too scared with all the polarization today that I might end up becoming a polarizing leader. But I think, like you said, if we have more and more millennials and Gen Zs come together and be like, hey, we're going to make the difference, we might unite this country, unite our community, unite our cities.
Well, tell you what, you got my vote. You let me know what you need and you got it. Hey, I end the podcast with 2 questions to everybody. The first question would be in relation to what you do. If someone's listening to this and like, man, I'd really like to know more about unification or what they do. If there was a book that you read that really caused an inspiration in relation to filling gaps, what would that book be and
Mm,
why?
mm. Adam, I've been a very bad reader lately. I'm trying to figure out if it's relating to what we do. Mm,
Just a book that you've read that you would really
mm,
feel like would resonate. What's your favorite book?
I haven't read very much lately, Adam.
Got to be one book over the history that you can think that you read that really inspires you.
You just caught me off guard there. I'm just trying to figure out what book have I read recently. Hmm.
It doesn't have to be recently. It can be a
Mhm.
book that you've read over the past 5 years.
I read the autobiography of Gandhi.
How was that?
Yeah. So that is one person that I would say, because I believe so much in the nonviolent struggle that maybe Martin Luther King led or maybe Gandhi led against colonial Britain
Hmm.
in India for the struggle of independence. I think maybe that's what may have inspired a little bit of the nonviolent work, the nonpartisan work that we lead at Happy World of connecting classrooms, because it's such a nonviolent way to show people, to bring people together, to let them break bread and communicate with people across borders and across all the labels that define us today. So I think the book would have to be the autobiography of Gandhi, who's popularly known as the father of the nation in India.
I love that. Dude, thank you for that inspiration. Second question, if there's one person that's really inspired you with the life that you've led, who would that person be and why?
Well, I'm so glad you asked. I think that immediately comes to the immediate person that comes to my mind is Dr. Jeannie Ramirez Mather, Corpus Mather. She was a Hispanic American professor of education at University of Science and Arts of Oklahoma. When I brought up the two young ladies from my school, Tori and Beth,
Yeah.
who led the toy drive with mostly Southern Baptist families, giving 1,200 toys to Muslim kids in refugee camps in Syria, this was the professor who inspired that. And this is the very same professor that every Christmas, she's now retired, she created a program in Chickasha, Oklahoma called Books for Tots. In the last 30 years, Books for Tots during Christmas has given out over 500,000 kids during Christmas. So she's the one who inspired this entrepreneurial spirit, the, social entrepreneur in me to see the gaps in life, because I saw her filling those gaps for so many years while she was in college. She was doing it with these international initiatives, or she was doing it locally, giving kids a book, just a book. Like you said, you brought up the book. Like, what book have you read? She was trying to improve literacy rates. Can you imagine? We're talking about literacy in the most developed, the most powerful country on earth. We have people that are illiterate today.
Wow. Dude, that's so cool. That is so cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. In summary, if you're going to look at the camera and you got someone that has been listening to this and they're like, well, I understand, I hear it, like, Akash, like, look at the camera and tell someone why they should make the world a little bit happier. What would you say to that person?
Well, anybody who's tuning in today, I hope the little bit I got to share with Adam today just gives you hope that you're never too young or never too old to make a difference in someone's life, whether it's through the stories I shared of my students, whether it's through my own story, honoring the life of my twin brother. I hope the biggest takeaway you can take from this is that this is a young man. I'm 33 years old. Ever since I was 24, or ever since I was a teenager, I was thinking about the gaps in life, just doing other things. So, and my kids who have been filling the gaps through these video calls, connecting and then taking action in their communities, I hope they give you inspiration, or that Adam right here out of his life, now as a single dad, but also as an entrepreneur, as somebody who wants to bring our world together, who wants to give hope to somebody who's tuning in, that maybe today when they listen to this podcast, they're going to come alive and they're going to find their purpose in life, or they're going to go do something to make their communities a better place. That I hope all of these experiences, these shared experiences that you got to tune into today, just give you inspiration that you are never too young or never too old to make a difference in someone's life.
I love that. Gosh, it's been a great conversation, dude. I got goosebumps and teared up a couple times as we were talking, and I just really appreciate what you're doing. Thank you for coming on the podcast, and you're welcome back anytime.
Likewise, it was an honor, and thanks for all you do, Adam.
Dude, absolutely. Well, it's Adam, the Backpack Theory podcast here with Akash Patel. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.